Welcome to Parisburg First United Methodist Church. Today we're filming from the back porch of the parsonage, and I want to say good morning to each one of you, and I praise God for the way He's working among us. As we prepare for this week, I want you to hear these words from Scripture. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisers. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisers, they succeed. Hear those verses today. Today now, I invite you to listen to the music of Aiden. He's a recent high school graduate here of Parisburg at Giles High School. Our sermon today deals with the idea of a coach, a mentor, somebody who's there to be with you, a supporter, a sponsor. My mind runs back to years ago. I was listening to three ladies who were highly frustrated. They were at church and they were talking and they were tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Well, being the pastor who wants to solve all problems, I quickly jumped in and said, well, you ought to get involved with a Dave Ramsey class. They said, who's Dave Ramsey? And I quickly explained, and they said, sounds interesting. But I mentioned we might need someone to lead the class. Suddenly, all three women joined together in one unanimous vote and said, we want Roger Rich to be our leader. Now, I was kind of in a quandary here. I didn't know who Roger Rich really was. I knew he was building a house at the end of the street, and that's really about all I knew about him. I knew he loved Jesus, but he didn't go to our church. In fact, wasn't even part of our denomination. But that wasn't stopping these ladies, and so I quickly got hold of Roger Rich and signed him up. Roger led the largest Dave Ramsey group I've been a part of. It was also the most successful for our church. We had 4 new families join our church, and people transformed their lives. I was kind of surprised because Roger Rich really didn't like Dave Ramsey that much. In fact, would often say, I'm not sure I agree with him on this point. Roger Rich was not a financial guru. He was not a banker or a lawyer or anything like that. He was a builder, but there were a couple of things about Roger that were special. First off, Roger was known throughout his community for being financially wise, and he had saved lots of money in his lifetime. Second off, his faith was apparent to all, and after a few quick moments, I agree with him. Roger knew what he was talking about when it came to Jesus. And third, it really came back to that house that was being built at the end of the street. You see, Roger was a person of dreams. The house he was building was started off with just a photograph. It was an old hotel that had burned down years ago in the community. Roger had a picture of the front porch of that hotel and a few memories. And from that alone, he was building his own house by himself to recreate that hotel look, and yet designed for his own family. You see, Roger was somebody people said, I want to listen to him. I want him to be my, whatever you might call it, coach, advisor, sponsor. It didn't matter what you called it. They said, that's the person I want to listen to. That's the person I want to be around. Today, I'm asking us the question, who do you want to be for your advisor? You know, great athletes like LeBron James, Serena Williams, Michael Phelps, they have a coach. And I wonder, why don't we? What's our problem? Why do we think we can go through life without having anybody else tell us what to do? Solomon, the wisest man in the scriptures, he had advisors around him. And so I'd like us to explore what makes a great advisor. What kind of advisors out there can we learn from? And listen to the question today is, could you be a coach for somebody? And who's coaching you? Let's begin by asking about a coach. About a decade ago, I read a book by Andy Stanley called The Principle of the Path. And one of the key questions from that book that got to me, and one of the key aspects of that book that got to me was asking, did I have a coach? Andy Stanley said he had one. And I thought, well, if Andy Stanley has a coach, maybe I need one as well. He said there are some things I look for in a coach. First off, one of the great things is they add an outside perspective. Also, they have a life experience. They have already gone through the season of life that I am currently going through, and they have got some wisdom from it. They have a proven track record. He says, I don't want a friend. A friend says they're going through this with me. I want somebody who's already experienced this and has come through and thrived. I don't want somebody who's going through the herd with me. I want somebody who's at the lead of the pack. I want to listen to those folks. So today I want to share with you some lessons I picked up. I called a friend of mine who's been through AA. He's been over a decade now. This gentleman has kept sober. And one of the key components of AA is that you have a sponsor. And so I said, what makes a great sponsor? He began to share a few things. He said, well, if you're going to be a good sponsor, you need to start off and you need to have boundaries. You need to declare that you're not the banker for this person. You're not a hotel for this person. You are there to help them, encourage them, And you're not going to enable somebody else to fail. Your goal is to enable them to succeed. But it's their choice. He also said, it was interesting to me to pick up this point. He said, when I started out, I needed somebody who was kind of nice to me. I needed somebody who was going to pat me on the back and say, good job, keep it up. However, after I had progressed the program a little bit, I needed somebody who was going to push me. I needed somebody who was ready to say to me, come on now, is that the best you got? Now he says that when I look for a sponsor, I look for someone who's an advisor, who makes suggestions, doesn't going to tell me what to do or how to do it, but somebody who's there to say, okay. Another key part he said is a sponsor is somebody who's available, who'll pick up the phone. It may be 5 times a day, although we counsel people that you shouldn't be calling quite that often. But he says if they're going to be there, you need to be able to be somebody who can pick up the phone and answer it. He also said, I need somebody who's going to be 100% honest. They need to tell me that this isn't going to be easy. They need to say, hey, you fouled up. They can do it a nice way, of course. But they need to be honest with me. They need to say, I struggled here too. He also shared a story with me. We'll change a few names. We'll call this guy Nick. Nick had just started in the program, and one of the reasons Nick gave for drinking was his spouse. And Nick had a sponsor, and when Nick had problems, he would call a sponsor like he's supposed to. And it wasn't uncommon for Nick to call multiple times a day in those first couple of weeks. And Nick would begin, he would never introduce himself. He would just simply drive right into the phone call and say, that blankety blank 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 woman. And he would go on a few minutes about what that little blankety blank woman had done today. After a while, it was interesting. The phone calls would go, the person, the sponsor would pick up. Nick would go on, that blankety blank woman, take a deep breath and say, thank you. And the phone call was over. Nick simply needed to say, I need to speak to somebody who will listen to me. I need to vent. I need to choose something besides alcohol to deal with the stress. Would you just listen to me? I need a voice. And that's all he got. That's all he needed. You see, who's coaching you? Who's out there listening to you right now and saying, okay, I hear you. We can deal with this. Let's make some good choices. Let's make some positive steps forward, and let's get on with things. I want to share with you a couple examples today. I talked to some folks in our church community who are coaches. The first one I want you to listen to is Mandy Seeberger. Mandy is a coach with Beachbody. As you listen to her story, I want you to pick up a couple things. What kind of coach was she looking for? You'll notice, you'll hear words like somebody who was available, somebody who had been through it, somebody who could encourage her. You're going to listen to the commitment she made. A commitment of 100 days gave her strength to be a coach. And you listen to her, she talks about coaching through the pandemic and how God says he's the one for us.
Fast forward to 2018, I ended up in the emergency room with stroke level blood pressure, and I knew that I needed to get back to healthy. And with my dad's health history, I knew genetics were not on my side when it came to blood pressure. I needed to lose weight, I needed energy, and I needed to get my blood pressure down. So for a couple of months, just kind of watched some different coaches until I found my coach, Amanda. And she was just bubbly and a Christian and had this wonderful perspective on life, but was also very honest in sharing her journey, the struggles, the ups and the downs. I signed up as a coach under her, still really not focused on the coaching part. I just knew that I needed to work on me, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody take care of them. So I loved that aspect of it. So I went in with her, continued to stay a coach though. And then in the beginning of 2020, as I was praying about the word that I wanted for the year, I just kept hearing God tell me purpose, and I didn't know what that meant. So I also decided to choose a 100-day program because I knew that 100 days hopefully would get me through the time frame that I needed to focus on something else. And as I got into this 100-day program, I really started seeing a shift in myself and in not just about being out of our house, but just in life in general, in my faith. So when we got back into the house, and I really decided to go all in with coaching. I felt amazing. I went to Amanda and I said, I'm ready to coach. And it has been the greatest thing for me. I now have a virtual gym on Facebook. It's a Facebook group called the Fit Chick Tribe. And there are me and other ladies in there that show up every morning to just share struggles and victories. And it really is just a community that we are building to really support and encourage each other. My biggest why for being a coach, first and foremost, is to be able to show up for myself, to be the healthiest and best version of myself that I can be, to fulfill the assignments that God gives me. My second biggest would be my kids and my family. I want to be a model and example for them. My vision and my prayer is just to be able for God to use me to bring as many people to Him as I can through this business and through finding and loving themselves just as God made them. So one of my clients reached out to me a couple months ago and was curious about what I was doing as far as workouts, seeing me do these workouts, and she wanted to feel good. She already had a nutrition plan, but she was really wanting to hone in on her workouts. And so she jumped in with me, and even after the first week, she was already losing weight. Her husband was noticing changes in the way her clothes were fitting and how much energy she had. So she came to me asking me about coaching. And just within having that conversation with her, I've noticed her posting and her business and her helping other people on the other side. So it's really great to see how just in less than 3 weeks, she is just rocking it. "2020 has been a wild year, to say the least. But as wild as it's been and everything that has happened, none of this is a surprise to God. Taking this time to really use it and reset as a person, as a family, as a community, a nation, and to give each other grace. There are so many things right now that Satan is trying to use to divide us, whether it's events that have happened or politics or whatever, and we all have different opinions, and that's okay. But He gives us grace every day, and we need to be able to give that grace back to other people. We're supporting each other because none of it is easy for any of us. We're all going through this together. But one thing that it doesn't change is God. And so I just feel like we need to use this time, cherish the slowdown some, and, send a text to say hello to somebody, send an email that maybe you haven't talked to in a while, make that phone call to somebody that, lives alone, and just really take this time for us to keep our eyes on Him and to really be His hands and feet and do the work that He's called us to do.
Now, I'd like you to hear Derek. Derek Wilson is one of my coaches. Over the last decade since I read this book by Andy Stanley, I've gone through 3 coaches. I picked up one who helped me grow spiritually. I've had another one, Rich Reed, who helped me deal with my weight problems. And I keep coming back to Derek Wilson because he has a proven track record. He encourages me and he challenges me. He shares a story about a church in West Virginia that was transformed. Listen to him now and ask ourselves, how could you be mentoring somebody today?
The Bible encourages us to disciple and coach people. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, Paul told Timothy, the things that I have taught you, you need to teach others, who will also teach others as well. I think that is a biblical point, that we are to be passing on our faith, and we are to be mentoring and discipling others that we have contact with. The second thing is I care about pastors. I care about helping them. Well, the main things that I have done as a pastor is actually revitalization, and that's kind of what led me to do this on a full-time basis, is the actual experience of reaching out with churches that were small and struggling to help them get stronger and get on their feet. The importance to me is for you to mentor is, and you have abilities and insight that needs to be shared with others. There are people that you as an individual will make a difference in their lives effectively, more effectively than other people that may have contact with these individuals. Second reason is I think it's important that pastors within their own congregation be discipling leaders, because you're only as strong as the leadership that you have around you. Our churches for so long became one individual operated. The pastor was the person who did everything. And we found that those churches usually only run about 100 to 125 people, depending on the capability of that pastor. And the more leaders you raise up, the stronger your church is, the greater the ministries are that church does in its community. God forbid anything bad happen to any of us. But if somebody passes away suddenly, if somebody gets moved or transferred to another job, you need to have someone that is being mentored in that ministry so that the ministry doesn't suffer. It's not my ministry, it's not my church, it's God's ministry, God's church, and we are stewards of that ministry. In the northern part of West Virginia, there's a church that a young man is running about 40 people there at the church. He has great ideas. He's a very talented young man, but just wanted somebody to help keep him focused and sharpened and help train his people about how to move the church to the next level. And we've been working together for about 9 years as well. And now he has grown so large, he had to go to 2 services, and now he's also getting ready to move into a new facility. This church is not anywhere you could find easily on the map. It's way off the beaten trail. But he had a commitment. He just needed some guidance, just needed support, needed an outsider, and we just partnered together, and God has done some phenomenal things. I think one of the most powerful changes that I have seen in the church is that the church had become addicted to meeting. They had become hooked on that the only way they could have church was to be in a church building. And that what has happened as a result of this virus is that 2 things. People have had to become the church. They've had to start living outside the box. They had to go out and learn and study the Bible and be creative in ways that they reached their communities as well as grow in the Lord. I work with a nonprofit that is works under the Bureau of Behavioral Health in West Virginia, that we go out and deal with education and development of programs and services that are helping dealing with our substance abuse epidemic that we have, the problem that we're having with addiction. I go in to train and educate, whether it's school system, personnel, teachers, students, and we're also going into churches and reaching out to help churches become more involved in this fight against substance abuse. The church has the answer. Mm-hmm. It has the solution to help deal with the epidemic of addiction.
Solomon was a tremendously wise gentleman. He was a king. He was a follower of the Lord God Almighty. He had a son named Rehoboam. Rehoboam inherited a lot of things from Solomon. And included in that, he had a great number of advisors that sat around and said, this is what you ought to do. However, Rehoboam did not listen to his father's advice. Rehoboam didn't do that. He didn't listen to his advisors. He didn't listen to his dad. And his impact destroyed a kingdom. Today, I believe you are ready to make an impact for others. Today, I believe you're ready to make a choice. You see, we have that option. And today, you can choose to get a coach. You can choose to find somebody who will guide you, strengthen you, and encourage you. Would you find that coach for yourself today? Would you say, all right, today's the day I'm ready to go forward. I know I need some help getting through this. I know I need more than a friend. I need somebody who's thrived. Likewise, I want to challenge you right now. Will you be willing to go mentor somebody else? Go find somebody who you see doing a great thing and who's coming along, and go sit down with them. Build a friendship. You may not call it a coaching relationship. You may not get paid for it, but you're going to get paid in heavenly rewards as you help that person be transformed. You can do it.